Got it. We're on. Good evening, everyone. Trust you well, wherever you are around not only Australia, but around the world. Yap has many followers from both hemispheres, northern and southern. I know we've got them in Greenland, in Denmark, in the UK, in Canada, in the US. We've got them in Ireland. We've got them in South Africa. So we've got a lot of people who follow us. Tonight is the first of probably three. Three Q&A sessions we'll be running. And we're doing this on the back of feedback from our members. So we received some great questions from our members, and we've grouped those into categories. And tonight we're just going to, I'm going to read them pretty much verbatim. I'm not going to try to modify them in any sense. So tonight we've got on the panel with us Joe Easton is a Senate candidate with the Great Australian Party in South Australia. And if you just watched my Facebook page, you would have seen Joe and I just doing an intro. We have Daryl O'Brien, who is running for the Senate in Victoria for the Great Australian Party. We have Darren Dixon, one of our clever, smart minds of constitutional law and other matters there, who's also in Victoria. We have Matty Hopkins, who's running for the Senate in New South Wales. Matt lives on the north coast of New South Wales. And we have party leader and founder Rod Cullerton. So welcome to you, fine people, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rod, I'm just going to kick in. Well, other than the fact we're being extorted at the petrol bowser, $2.41 a litre up here at the moment in some parts. And the guy I spoke with today, when I put $1.50 worth in, which gave me about a quarter of a litre, said it's going to go to $3 up here in Queensland. Are you hearing anything around the traps, Rod, about the oil?
Well, actually, I am. As some guy put out a message, he's prepared to barter one 20-litre jerry can of fuel for a house and four bedrooms and 2 bathrooms.
Getting that way, isn't it? It's getting that way. Getting the oil in apparently is the problem. Apparently there's not a shortage, just getting it to the shores. So,
well, I don't know about that. I'm just wondering, what a time for this to come about when people are, financially suffering everywhere over this COVID restrictions and what these state premiers have been doing. I just think it's atrocious. So.
Yeah, maybe time to drop the excise, huh? That they sting us with at the bowser, show a bit of sympathy to the Australian people.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's just gone up as Rod's gone again. You might have hit something there, which is a bit sad because I was going to ask.
Good.
He's coming back.
Yep. I'm all good.
All good.
Yep.
Oh, good. So, Rod, a lot of people, before we kick off, a lot of people are asking about you, mate. So you've hit the border. You've spent a few days at the border. You had quite a few people come and get in and support you. Can you just give people a brief update of what happened, where you are, and what's next?
Well, it was the best game of state footy in the nation's history since Federation, I might say. And to bounce the ball at a political limitation and not a border was quite remarkable. And a lot of that, what GAP tries to do, or what we tried to do with the aid of our support team, is to go out on the front line and use the tools that were granted to me while I was in the federal parliament and apply those tools, in real life, in real time. And that's what we've done. And every time we've been able to shuck the oyster, so to speak, and hold the so-called WA police to account, and basically get them to admit that they don't know the law. And I think that's just atrocious, because these people are public servants. They are there to protect the people. And it's not good enough if you go to a job and you don't know the law, because the constable has to at all times uphold the law. He's never to take an instruction if it's unlawful, or if he's in doubt, from a government or a higher ranking police officer. And a lot of them are. And I just want to take people around, apply what we know, what our federation granted us, and that we do have a right to travel freely through this great frontier. And I think the most magical moment I ever had was rocking up on this newly purchased scooter, which is about 1.2 meters in length, against all these 36.5 meter road trains at this political limitation, and comparing one's horn. That in a way, it just showed the stupidity of what was happening and how everything is happening on the within the jurisdiction. We had a surveyor come out, and he's done a national, looked up the national maps on the government website, and it's just amazing how everything that the WA police are doing is in the jurisdiction of South Australia. So I don't know where all that goes, but look, until you get out there and pressure test all of this, you never know, and that's what we're doing. We're just bringing the people through live streams, through Facebook, which is a great tool that I think a lot of people, back in the 70s and 80s when we became this de facto republic, never thought that we'd have the powers of the internet. And that's really gone against them, and it's gone very favourable in our way to educate people and to show Australians that we've been taken as fair dinkum fools. And I don't say that with any disrespect or derogatory meaning, but it's a fact. It's amazing how we've just continued to obey something that goes against our constitutional rights and freedoms and values. And that's all we're about, because that's the constitutional sworn duties of a federal senator, whether he's sitting in a parliament, the Commonwealth, or whether he's sitting in some alternative jurisdiction called the Australian government. If he's taken an oath to the law of the country, that's what he must uphold without fear of favour. So that's really what I'm doing, and we've created a party to be part of another tool in the toolbox to carry that message home for the rights and the right of this great nation, these great people that live in it.
All right. Well, we might start off with the constitutional questions, because it probably made up about 40% of all the questions we had. So it's a question I get I get asked as well, and that is GAP aware that it's going back into an unlawful government? And there's probably two parts to it. Rod, you're always talking about, get back under the Commonwealth, get back under the Commonwealth. Well, what instrument will GAP use to make this happen? And I might even hand it over to Darryl or yourself, Rod, if you want to have a respond to that. So, well, first one is GAP aware we're going into an unlawful government? The second one, you're always talking about getting under the Commonwealth. Well, what instrument will GAP use to make that happen?
Well, that'll be the law of the land, and that is the Constitution. That's what was granted to us at Federation, and that was ratified by the people of Australia, that this is how this great nation would run on an act that was passed out of the UK Parliament. So we adopted that act, and we need to go back in for the purpose of getting out. And I've always said, and I'll let the boys go on that, carry on with this, because I don't want to take the whole show, but pretty much what we need to do is go in to the Australian government, which is not recognised under the Constitution, for the purpose of coming back under the Commonwealth Parliament of Australia. So that is where our rights and freedoms lie. And like I said, I'm not sure what that administration office is up the hill. All I know is our true parliament is the one that they put old on the top of, and that is our Westminster Commonwealth Parliament. There's no question. Everything refers to it, and that's our jurisdiction. And until the people realise that we're an Australian merino and not an African Wassie, and know that this is what built this country, we need to go back into that paddock. And once we get back into that paddock, we'll be on greener pastures.
Perfect. Thanks. Darren, anyone else? You got a perspective there you want to share?
Well, I think we're going to need, people want to know what we're going to do if we get in, and what does the Constitution grant us with respect to dealing with the Australian government being a foreign power, and or the Parliament of Australia. And I believe section 50 of the Constitution, subsection 2, kicks in, where both houses would have to sit and deal with the problem directly under the Constitution, and do inquiries within the Parliament to why this has occurred, what legislation's gone through, and essentially set up a filter. And accordingly also inquire with all the current members as to, and sitting members, because this is a half Senate election, so the sitting members as to whether their oath is in accordance with the Constitution. So
Section 42, Darryl?
Yeah, it'd be an internal inquiry, and it would be public. So we would be insisting that it be televised.
Beautiful. Darren, you got anything to add to that at all, mate?
Yes, this has been documented actually in the Australian Law Journal from the January 1974 edition, where they spoke of the term Australian government. And it was discussed in the Australian Law Journal that the present government of the Commonwealth of Australia had shown its dislike for the terms Commonwealth of Australia and Commonwealth government, and its preference to replace them for official usage and change to Australia and Australian government. Now, right there is you can see that there's this government actually have a hatred and a disdain for what the Commonwealth Constitution provides, because in Section 1 it provides that the legislative power of the Commonwealth shall be vested in the Parliament of the Commonwealth. So straight away we're looking at a Labor government that brought this in, and the Labor government's disdain for what the actual Commonwealth Constitution brings to the table and how the Commonwealth is to be run, and what they actually did in 1973 in respect of within this an act called the Statute Law Revision Act, where they removed the word Commonwealth from every single law. The document that would be relied on would be Section 1 of the Commonwealth Constitution, which says, as I just said, the legislative power is vested in the Parliament of the Commonwealth and not an Australian Parliament as chosen by the Labor government that who has bestowed all the problems that we are under at the moment, up until, I know we're under a Liberal government at the moment, but they seem to be two wings of the one bird, acting in tandem to bring about a particular scheme. So it's the Constitution itself that will be relied upon to bring about the or go back to the actual foundations of what the Constitution brings.
Beautiful. And I guess the way I respond to that, so if I could come back to the first part, is GAP aware it's going into an unlawful government? Yeah, absolutely. We do say that. We understand we are an unincorporated political party. We understand. We've got some of the best minds around constitutional affairs. So we kind of understand the role that plays, but it's to go back into the Parliament for the purpose of restoring our Commonwealth. This might be a hard question to answer though, and see if we can. Is there a time limit, do you think? And what sort of time would this take? Months, years, do you think, to work through? Because you've got to manage the country at the same time, and then are you moving forward because if new laws are coming, or at that point in time, do you say anything new now is pursuant to the Commonwealth Constitution Act of 1900?
No, I don't see that. I see that if you're outside your jurisdiction, it's in the best interest for the nation to get back within its jurisdiction, because you've got foreign trade, you've got a lot of other things that need to be dealt with, and treasury and so forth. But I will make this observation. GAP has made it very clear on its candidates, the nominations, that every person that the party selects, and under CADCO, which is Commonwealth of Australia Democratic Co-op, have all agreed to take an oath to Christian values. And what I see in the major parties, and I don't make I don't make any claims here, but there are a lot of people in there that are not taking a contract to Christian values. And so if that's the case, then they shouldn't be, how can you have a parliament that runs under the Constitution? Because, some people have different views when it comes to religion and whatever. So what we're about is to give a bona fide selection of good Australian people that, in effect, aren't compromised. I'm not saying other people are compromised, but basically, nailing their flag to the mast and saying, look, I do uphold Christian values, and in order to do that, I'm prepared to take a contract to the Constitution, which is what we do as a pre-entry. And that way we know that we're like Darren says, Section 1 of the Constitution says we must have the Parliament under the Commonwealth of Australia and be under the Constitution. And that's really, really what we want, because 44I of the Constitution makes it very clear that you cannot have any person in there that has taken a contract or an oath or swears an allegiance to a foreign power. Now, that may be a foreign Christian, a foreign religion power. It could be anything. If that particular person doesn't take a contract to the Constitution and to Christianity and Almighty God, because we're as the people, Almighty God, well, that's it, and that's our contract, and that's our law, and they're the terms that we have to enter into on behalf of other people as public trustees to make sure that we have a bona fide true parliament that upholds everyone's rights, and that's what the ethos of GAP is.
Beautiful, thanks, mate. Kind of segues into the next question, and that is around the World Economic Forum, the UN, etc. There's a new a new constitution proposed under the this one actually got a lot of coverage in the questions and answers. The questions. A new constitution being proposed under the United Nations, which the World Health Organization, the very clean World Health Organization, apparently will be the major sponsor. What's GAP's position on dealing with offshore authorities such as those?
Not interested.
Not interested. That's an easy one. Matty Hopkins, you got a view on this? Bringing you in, mate.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Jace. So the importance of a constitution is it's a restraint on government, okay? And what we appear to have going on at the moment is a government that's slipped its constitutional leash, if you like, and it's not about to put itself back on. And the Constitution, at the heart of the Constitution, is the idea of the rule of law, which means that everyone is equal before the law. And that's the importance of it. And that's why we've got to get back to some kind of rule of law, put this rogue government back into the constraints of the Constitution. Now, with the WHO, people might not be aware that we already have laws in our country that bind us to the World Health Organization's international health regulations through the National Health Security Act. I don't know if too many people know about that. But that's really problematic when you consider that one of the largest donors to the WHO is the Bill Gates Foundation, who's a vaccine proponent and makes money off vaccines. So there's a huge conflict of interest there just on the face of it. Yeah. So we really do need to separate us. We need to be a good global country, nation, in the neighbourhood. We need to be responsible, but we don't need to cede our power at all. We do not. There is by stealth, and over decades, we've seen our national identity eroded. We've seen our lands sold off. We've seen many problematic things. We've seen manufacturing disappear. And a lot of this has got to do with different trade agreements that are not seemingly working out for the everyday Australian people. So we really need to go to the heart of those problems. But we're an independent nation. We should be. We should be energy independent. We should be food independent. All these things. We need to be a good global citizen amongst other countries, but we need to be an independent, sovereign nation.
Nice. Well, someone told me, and I haven't validated, we once upon a time had 30 oil wells around Australia. We have 2 today, and we've signed up to OPEC, and have a look at how well we're going with that at the moment. I'm not saying all the time. Joe, when you sit back and you've been in the driver's seat for about a minute coming into the Great Australian Party. How do you feel when you hear all this stuff that's happening, especially around the constitutional matters, that what we call an unlawful government? How does that make you feel as someone who's served people and community for so long? You are on mute too, mate. I'll see if I can unmute you, but you're still
Sorry.
unmuted. There we go.
I've got
Yeah.
two screens going, so it's really hard to
Worries.
get back to it. So how do I feel coming in last minute?
No, you've been in the driver's seat for about a minute. How do
Right.
you feel when you look at this information that we obviously, you know, we meet Wednesday nights, we have our regular meetings around constitutional affairs, matters, when we allege, or we say that, you know, what we find is evidence suggests the government's unlawful. How do you feel when you come into this, someone who served the public for so long?
It's quite daunting, really. Like, there's so much information out there that I've got to catch up on. I mean, you guys are all over the Constitution, and being a police officer 34 years, I've just been dealing with acts, you know, Criminal Consolidation Act and all that sort of thing. And now to come back and actually learn what the Constitution's all about, it's a bit of an eye-opener, really. And the people that I speak to, they're not really aware of what the Constitution's all about. So, yeah, I'm learning so that I can also talk to them about, because that's what GAP's about. So yeah, it's a bit of a catch up. I feel like I'm running to try and catch up to you guys, but
did you have any awareness of anything of this prior, forgetting whether where you are from a level perspective of education? Did you have any awareness that this stuff was going on prior?
I guess the last couple of years I've been doing a little bit of research, I suppose, and there were a couple of people on YouTube that I started to follow that was educating on the Constitution and what we're about, and to realise that it was back in 1973 that things actually changed. And I don't remember going to a referendum. It sort of hit home that things aren't really right, that you know, we are being run unlawfully, and it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be happening in our country or anywhere, really.
Yeah, no, always good to get a perspective there. And I think you've looked after criminals in the state of South Australia. I think what we're looking at here is criminals at a much higher level. If I could be so bold as to say that. There is a question here. Sorry, I'll go back to the questions too. Is GAP concerned about the election fraud in the upcoming federal election?
No, because we've put the Governor General on notice, and I'm just in the process of drafting a letter to the Chief Legal Officer of the Australian Electoral Commission, and to make sure that the election writ that is issued contains the Great Seal of the Commonwealth and not the Great Seal of Australia, which the people don't recognise. So we need to make sure that we're going into a lawful and proper election, and to do that is to put the Australian Electoral Commission and the Governor General on notice, because basically that's where it all starts from. So providing that the writ comes out with the Great Seal of the Commonwealth, well, it's a fair game for everyone, isn't it? So
maybe take that one step further, Rod, and maybe so that was pretty much a very popular question, but there's a lot of conversation around Dominion software, and I'm pretty sure we spoke and we've asked the AEC whether they're using Dominion for the federal, and they said no, they're not. Well, we pressed a bruise on that because it did come to me, and then I sort of released it on Facebook, and I've never seen the Australian Electoral Commission work so hard on a weekend trying to put out a fire. In actual fact, they'd make the best fire emergency. But they basically tried to go on the defensive. But had we have not brought it to the public's attention, it would have been just another sneaky maneuver to put these things through, because there's no democratic process playing out in any parliament around Australia at the moment. And they're just basically just making up their own rules to benefit themselves, and you know, it's a runaway train, and unfortunately we've just got to lay the barbed wire across the track, because nothing beats barbed wire, and let it all get tangled up and pull it up. But if we can sort of basically bring the law back, and that's the remedy, is to bring back our law and fix it, because they can't get over our law. Our law is well enshrined, and
you know, and like you say, this constitution but happening internationally, where have the people gone to ratify that of Australia? We don't know about all that. What's it got to do with Australia? So, you know, at the end of the day, these people that claim to have been representing us in a true parliament clearly haven't. And that's an issue for the Australian government, not for the Commonwealth Parliament of Australia. So that's why it's so important that we get people to realise what has happened, and it's up to the people to fix it. It's your country, it's your parliament, and it's your law. So unless you want to do something about it, and it's your representative that wants to go in as a public trustee. So till that happens, you know, I suppose if it'll just continue the way it is because we're fighting a big beast. But if people come in and see what's happened, well, then we've got the law to fight that beast. So we don't need to fight it. We just need to cut it loose and deal with it later. It doesn't actually exist. We need to come back under something that exists.
When they passed the foreign troops bill, I think it might have been 2020 or 2021, there was a few dots I was trying to join. And when they came out with this constitutional one, straight away I went, bang, there's one dot. And again, another bill that allows foreign troops, and fact checkers have, bless them, have come out and tried to refute a bit of that, but they couldn't do too much because basically what they said was there were claims made that these people would receive indemnity from prosecution, so no liability basically. And the claim was that's not 100% correct. It might be 99% correct, but fact checkers took great delight in saying it's not 100% correct. But it's pretty much on the money, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, I think Darren should answer that. Look, you know, this bill that you talk of, the question is, has it received Her Majesty's, you know, assent, so to speak? So I'll let Darren go to that one, because unless it's all passed under constitutional law, it's of no legal effect. So Darren, I'll let you have a little bit of a chat on that one.
So the FISA documents, they do have a multitude of pages that list adverse reactions. And their adverse reactions in respect of the testing period prior to the release of the actual medication. You need to look at the foundation of law, and Matt will probably back me up on this, because when someone is damaged and they cause a tort to be instigated against someone, you can't legislate away from that. It's a basic breakdown of the rule of law. If you're damaged, you have a right to be heard within the courts, and I don't believe that the government can actually legislate liability away from it, especially when there's outstanding evidence that overwhelms the removal of the liability. It appears to be something that's been done across the globe, and with the passage of time, I don't think that that liability would stand up in a court of law. A government legislating for such things is really in conflict and beyond their power. That's my opinion.
Well, they've certainly put it in place. Matt, you got a view on that, mate?
Well, the Nazis legislated themselves into extraordinary power, okay? That's how they obtained such a force. And look at what it took to dismantle that system. So when we talk about, you know, something might not have royal assent, but once a government's gone rogue, it doesn't care about those things. It's just simply using the tools of Parliament to increase its power. And this is not just happening in Australia. This is happening around the world. And people around the world are being oppressed from some kind of centralised cabal, if you like. We're all being affected by this, but we all need to resist in our own capacity and in our own circumstances. We've got an election coming up, perhaps. This one's scheduled, but given what's taken place in the last 2 years, I'm not certain that any kind of election is guaranteed. But that represents us an opportunity to try and take back this lawmaking parliament, whether it's legitimate, whether it's not. It has the full force of the state behind it. So that's the practical problem. It might not be constitutionally compliant, but it has all the force of the state at its disposal. We have this opportunity coming up, potentially in the next election, to try and infiltrate that power structure, that power monopoly, the monopoly of these two parties and perhaps controlled opposition. So this is what is really important for the people of Australia. And we all, across the world, we need to resist what's going on. And that's the best thing that we can do at this point in time. The other thing is to just, as individuals, just to do whatever we can to maintain the disbursement of power, or to resist this centralisation of power. But that's what I would say to there's a difference between something that's lawful, something that's legal, and something that is just imposed upon you through brute force. And that's pretty much where we're at this point in time. Now, we've had ministers of state parliaments, et cetera, and kind of entrenched bureaucrats using the words New World Order. And so I think you'd have to be very naive to think that there is not some kind of high-powered, small cabal, it's probably the best word, that is imposing its will or its agenda or its world vision upon the people of the world. And it's not, I don't believe it's not in the everyday person's interests, what they've got planned for us. So we need to resist it at all costs. If we're wrong, so be it. At least we've corrected something that's not working anyway. But if we're right, we really do need to be vigilant at the very least.
Yeah, Matty, I don't think it's even a matter of being wrong. I mean, it's there. It's right there in front of our eyes. I mean, Klaus with his World Economic Forum and the Davos and all the rest of them, and even his lead man, if you listen to this guy, Schwab's right-hand man, if you listen to him talk, most people, if they stopped and listened to his words, they would go, well, hang on. You're talking about us. You're talking about, they tell you in plain sight. It's there for all to see. It is there for all to see. We'll just talk about, I want to sort of move on to it again, just segue the question through. Yes, Darren. Yeah.
Jace, could I just quickly say, Matt raised a very good point, and the listeners really have to understand that they're talking about, it's an unlawful government, it's a rogue government. We can sit here and talk about those opinions that we have and the opinions that the listeners and viewers have, but what they do is valid until it's proclaimed invalid. Just like what Matt mentioned earlier in regards to Germany, everything was legislated into power. Yeah. And it's not until it was proclaimed invalid and therefore a crime was it invalid. But everything they did at that time, while that law was valid law. And that's the thing that everyone has to understand. You can scream to the hills that things are invalid and there's rogue governments, but it's not unlawful. You can scream that it's an unlawful government as much as you want, but until it's proclaimed, it's not.
And that is the fight that GAP has taken on. I mean, that's well said too, mate. Thank you. But that is exactly the fight that the Great Australian Party's taken on. And IMOP, people like Len Harris fighting that as well, and Australian Federation Party. It's why we do what we do every day, because we want to take it out from their lawful state, what they call lawful, and back under our true law, our Commonwealth Constitution Act of 1900. It's exactly where we need to be. It's kind of segues. There's a couple of questions here which I'll read, but I'll go this one first. How will GAP, maybe Daryl, if I can get you here, how will GAP ensure the people of Australia have a voice when it comes to the likes of bills or major issues that are impacting Australia?
Well, thanks for the question, Jace. Our aim with GAP is to make sure the Australian people are first of all aware of what government can and cannot do, which is what the Constitution is pretty much there to say. The voice of that Constitution has to come from the constituent, and we're dedicated to making sure the constituent has absolute access to that Constitution, and also a way of communicating what their community and what they want as individuals to their representatives. And we're insisting that the representative have an open ear to that, be it, regular meetings in their particular community or whatever. But we encourage the constituents to learn how to communicate, and that's been given to us over the decades by people like Arthur Cresby, expressing in writing on paper to their representative what they require or whether they need better understanding. Ideally, I'd like to see the ABC TV turned into a constitutional education channel for those purposes, because when it comes to amending or making a change to the Constitution itself or to the limitation of any of the states, it relies upon the knowledge of the constituent before that question can be drafted, put to the Parliament, and the Parliament then put it out to the people in the form of a referendum. So, we're really dedicated to making sure that the people step forward in a manner that's consistent with the voice of the Constitution.
Beautiful. I think a lot of us forget that we are the ones that actually should raise the issues that the government the lower house then goes and raises to put into the Parliament and have conversation. Rod, do you want to add something there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, at the Great Australian Party, we are investing very heavily in our website. And I know people say, we've come up with, designed the app so that people, and there has been complications on the app as one, it's never been done before in politics. And, I'm an inventor, and I got together and saw the purpose of having this tool so that we could educate people and ask them, because that's what a true public trustee does. It asks the constituents, not what we want, it's what the constituents want. So we are investing heavily. We're not a well-funded party. We're not taking and have the big banks, shoveling it into our furnaces. So we don't have a lot to burn, but what we try and do is apply it where it's going to be best used. And because, we are now putting up on our shop the constitutional book, and that author used a lot of what we did in the team with Darren and Daryl in putting that book together. And when Joe turns around and says, it's a real wake-up call, a lot of people don't know about the Constitution. Well, it was because it was deliberately taken away from people. And that was in my maiden speech, because how may you know what you have if you never knew that you had it in the first place? So, it's now time that people understand that we have these protection, our ozone layers to our freedoms and rights in this great nation for the respect of all Australian people, tribal or other. So look, so that's where we're going. We want to take it, if GAP is successful, obviously we get there a lot quicker in the upper house and certainly in the Parliament. But if it's a hard gig, well, hopefully we wake up the masses in what we're doing. So we can only do our best on the day. So yeah, I just wanted to add that we're trying to really keep it simple, educate the people, bring them along on the journey. And once they participate and see that there's a benefit coming back under our law, they'll warm to that. No, you know, in masses actually. So.
Okay, just on the houses there, one question we did get was, what's the difference between the House of Representatives and the Senate? So I guess the answer there would be, in the House of Reps, there's 151 seats around Australia at the federal level. So I'm in the seat of Longman. Where are you, Rod? What seat are you in?
Oh, well, I'm for the state. I've pounced around a few seats actually, but no, I'm for the state of Western Australia. So I'm in the upper house, no lower house seat for me.
No. What seat do you live in?
Oh, I think it's Roe.
Roe? Okay.
No, O'Connor.
All right. So there's 151 of them around Australia, and you'll have your lower house members that are running for the parliament, and they will look after a local area. Basically, that's the extent of what the lower house does. And if they get 50% plus one vote, they are elected into the parliament. And if you get 76 seats, then congratulations, you form government. At the moment, I think that number can move, but at the moment it's 76 seats. The Senate, Rod, you were a former senator. We might just while you're there, keep going. What does the Senate mean to you?
Well, it's the highest court in the land. It sits with 76 jurors. I mean, 12 senators are elected out of every state, 2 out of every territory. You know, it's the House of Review. It's probably got more power than the House of Lords in London under the Westminster system, but unfortunately, it's not running under that system at the moment. It can call anyone to the Parliament. It can call judges. It can call any public official to the Parliament and explain. So it has a lot of powers to you know, root out corruption, I suppose, and that's what we really want to do. So if we can get the players in there more so, yeah, we can do the job. You
guys want to add anything at all from Daryl, given you're running for the Senate? Matty, any comments at all?
Yeah, I'll make it's in the annotation to the Constitution that, and Rod's right, the Senate is the High Court of Parliament, and we intend to exercise it as that. And because this is bigger than Ben-Hur, we also have the power to join both houses together and sit as one big grand jury, because this is unprecedented what we're going through since Federation, but more so in the last 2 years, and allegiances to foreign powers.
And that's going to play strong with the pretending premiers, because you know, with what's happened and the effects of what's happened around this great nation, you know, with the invoking of the Australia Act of 1986 and Whitlam basically bringing us under de facto republic, you know, removing the Commonwealth and replacing it with Australia through the Royal Styles and Titles Act, or introducing, bringing a Queen of Australia and an adopted title through that act. And, you know, we can clearly, without any question, because that's the whole constitutional role of a federal senator, is to make sure the states don't go rogue and that they're compliant to the laws of the Commonwealth. And currently at the moment, that's not the case.
Eddie, do you have anything at all, mate? To add further? You're cool to keep moving?
Sorry, you got me on the hop then.
No, you're right, mate. That's fine. Well, it's just about the upper house, the Senate. Probably we covered it. I just know whether you want to add anything or weigh in.
I guess, you know, we've got a pretty good understanding of the Constitution and the rule of law. But what we also need to do is understand why things have gone wrong. What's happened? What's allowed these powers to assert the rule of law, and what's allowed. What mechanisms have been used, or you know, tools, or even weapons, or you know, silent weapons, quiet wars types of things that has allowed these foreign globalist forces to come in and undermine our Westminster system. Now, the Westminster system can work, but we can see right now that it's vulnerable and it can be usurped. and we need to understand what happened and then how to fix it. Now, I think some of the reasons are perhaps the central banking system, and the integration of finances. Some kind of almost Hydra type of force that controls the majority, or 99% of the central banks around the country, around the world. So we have to understand. Okay, it's all good to understand the Constitution, but why and how did it go wrong? And we need to work on rectifying those if we're to rebuild or have any chance of sovereignty and individual personal liberty, because what's in store seems to be some kind of one world communist government with social credit scores, and we're already seeing what's going on, in parts of the world that are copping some heat now. Massive censorship, people are locked out of banks. They're talking about turning off people's cars. So what happens into the future when if they get their way? And I'm certainly trying to do everything I can to protect my kids' future. But some kind of social credit score where, what was that movie? Back to the Future, where just for having a political opinion, he was locked out, lost his job, and all that kind of stuff. And that's where we're heading.
Very Black Mirror, Matty. Very Black Mirror.
Yeah. Okay. So,
I think what we need to get back to is the very foundation of what the Commonwealth is, because the word Commonwealth conveys a political fact that the Federation or the Federation of Australia since 1901 is a union of people and not a union of governments, which it's become.
Absolutely.
The evidence of that is the national cabinet. So we've got this group of governments that sit outside the Constitution, basically doing the bidding of a small group of businessmen. And that's what we're looking at the moment. That's what needs to be changed and eradicated.
There is the question about, is Australia corporatised? Before we come to that one, I might just ask Joe one. Joe, people have said they see my mug and Rod's mug pop up everywhere, and people have built trust in us too as individuals, which is great. How can the people get to know the other candidates, Joe? So you and you, what are you going to do here?
Well, I'd suggest first of all you go onto the GAP page, because I think just about all the candidates are up there now, and find out who your candidates are in your state and territory. You've got me in South Australia for the Senate. You've got Daniel Sugars for Spence, and you've got Jamie Witt, who's for High Marsh. And as you've just put up, Jamie's organised a black tie event. So we are going to get together. So I'll be there on the night as well. And that way you can come and have a chat with us, enjoy a 3-course dinner. He's also organised a drinks package and entertainment. So on Friday, the 8th of April at the Sunnybray Function Centre. So I know this one's for South Australia only, but I mean, anyone from interstate's more than welcome to come over. But that's the way to get you to know your candidates. Hop on our Facebook pages, send us emails.
How do people book this event, Joe, for example?
They go through Eventbrite. So if you get onto Jamie Witt's Facebook page, you'll find the actual function listed there, and he's put a link there which links it to Eventbrite. So if you just click on the Eventbrite there, that'll take you over to the website and you can book your tickets that way.
Okay. And you look forward to the next, well, I'm tipping we've got, what is it now, March 13. So we've probably got 8 weeks before the election, 9 at the most. And the election has to be held on the 21st at the latest. You plan on getting out there at every opportunity, every available moment?
Yeah, definitely. I'm putting a bit of an itinerary together now. So I'm hoping to travel as far as I can throughout the state. I want to go up north, down south, looking at our members list actually to find out where the majority of our members are, because, you know, they've joined GAP for a reason. They believe in what we are about. So I think it's only fair that I try and get out to see our members and have face to face. So then that way they can talk to me. I'm here to represent the people. So I need to know what their concerns are, and I can't do anything unless I know what they want us to do, because like you say, we're here for the people if we're elected, not the other way around. So
it is
so
the
I'm
number one.
definitely-
Yeah, number one tip I would say: just get
Yeah.
out there. It doesn't matter where you go, just get out there and be in community. Daryl and Maddie, what have you guys got? Well, Daryl, you first. What have you guys got lined up over the next 8 weeks?
Well, to get out there, especially to the country areas, starting around Ballarat, then Shepparton, then out to Gippsland Way, to Bairnsdale, Sale. So mainly because I've got to cover the whole state.
You do, mate. It's a tough gig, but you're not living in Queensland and you're not living in WA, let me say.
That's
Very big.
my furthest point of destination, I guess, would be Mildura and Warrnambool.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, it's just a matter of getting that itinerary together and putting the rubber to the road, mate.
Get out there. Yeah. It's like I said, it's incredibly, it's just a beautiful feeling to be in community. I mean, I love this. It's a passion for me to get out and do what I do. Maddie, what about you, mate, in New South Wales?
Yeah, so I guess a lot of the work in front of me with regards to GAP is over the internet. Being an upper house candidate, it's for the state, and to try and cover the whole state is difficult, especially when there's floods, etc. at the moment. But to certainly head down to Sydney once the election's called, and we know with some certainty some dates, that the Western Sydney, they've been very supportive of the work that we've been doing. When I say the work that we've been, I'm talking about the legal work, the court cases, etc., etc. So a lot of support there. But for me, to be realistic, the best bang for my time will be over the internet, just sheer reach.
Okay, thanks, mate. Well, I'll just quickly pop up on the Great Australian Party website under candidates here. You can see it there. So this is all of us here so far. There are more people who are joining the team, who are coming on. Tony Dobrin's been doing the first part of that qualification process, and it goes through a second round, and then Rod has a say in there as well. So if you want to know who your candidate is, that's the whole lot of us there at the moment. And like I said, there are more that are being scrutinised at the moment or interviewed at the moment, and you can go under your individual state if you wanted to. So Queensland, we only have a couple, although we are interviewing 4 more for the state of Queensland as well. Perfect. Thanks for that. I really do appreciate that. So there was another question I wanted to come back to about, Rod, I'm going to talk to you on this one, mate, because you're a farmer. What can GAP do to protect our farm? I mean, God, if anyone ever saw your 60 Minutes interview, mate, they would know this. But what can GAP do? What will GAP do to protect our farmers, their farms, and provide food security?
Well, look, before I go to that, I just wanted to say the candidates are going up. If we can get enough paid members, we will continue to fill the seats. Okay, so we would like to go in with a full deck of cards. So it's up to the people. If we can get that support, you'll see more candidates pop up. Okay, well, yes, I'm a farmer. We bring back co-ops, obviously. The reason why they got rid of co-ops is because they work so well. And being a manufacturer, I've been a broadacre farmer for a long time, and I have been a mill manufacturer. So I've owned big milling facilities as well. So I understand. And we were taking commodities at a farm gate price. You know, like the normal system would probably offer you $97 net farm gate price, and we were taking that to $1,500 a tonne and still being 30% under the retail market. So we want to encourage farmers to be their own environment tool, I suppose, and that because they are the best people to have under the co-ops to plant trees and get the green side going. Certainly put a proactive team international, because people say to us, well, Australia doesn't, it's a dry continent, but with no till and water harvesting rights, and certainly bringing down water from the Ord and opening it up, that is irrigating this great nation, because you can grow quality with sunlight, you can't grow quality with flood, with a wet climate. So get a lot of fungal disease. And I do know, being an active agent for the Australian Wheat Board in its heyday, they rely on Australian wheat and commodities outside our domestic market to make sure that other countries can blend our grain to meet world standards. So that's the beauty of Australia. I mean, we're so blessed to have a country like we've got. So yeah, we would certainly open up more agriculture industries, more consolidated industries. Food and water is what we need to go forward. Everyone knows that, and quality. So we're right behind the farmers, but we're also right behind the small communities and hydrating the small communities, getting people to live outside the metro areas, becoming more community orientated, because nothing can take away a local country community. And they all dig in, and we're losing that. And certainly supporting people that are up in drought areas, that certainly on station country, they have we give them a nursing platform. So that's like a nursery to grow lucerne, give them grants to harvest water when the water's there, and to irrigate so that we don't have any starving cattle. Certainly during the period when it's drought stricken, we allow them to have access to a nursery and grow lucerne and keep the condition on the cattle. So it's more proactive approach, and just striving for yield, and whether that's through tonnes per hectare or price outside the farm gate, that is the ethos of Great Australian Party. So no farmers, no industry really. If it doesn't, that's why they call a primary producer, because each year they put so much more into the economy, but we could put a lot more with proper management and good oversight with our export.
So we're hit the top or the bottom of the hour, but one thing that I speak passionately about is the elderly in Australia. I think they've been totally abused and neglected. In this country, we've got a national debt of $1.479 trillion. It may have clicked over to 1.48 trillion while we're talking here.
Have we really, or is that the Australian government's debt?
Sorry, mate. Yeah, no, great point. That's the Australian government debt.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Thank you. The country in itself has a little bit more than that, but you're right. It's not our debt, it's theirs. We've got 3.5 million Aussies living below the poverty line. We're seeing inflation everywhere. I mean, it's just extortion tax everywhere. Now, I know you get these emails. I certainly get plenty of them, Rod, but the elderly people in this country on $450, $480 bucks a week, they're eating. I met a couple of pensioners in my local IGA the other day, and they're telling me they're eating baked beans for dinner, and they've got a carpool because they can't actually, their money's not going far enough. This is what we're doing to our elderly. And this is what
the very people that pioneered this country, and we're all the beneficiaries of their hard work with freeways and infrastructure. Yeah. And this Australian government treats them like that. That's what I'm saying. We don't have a government that represents the people, and here's the evidence of it. I mean, that they would certainly not get away with that under the Commonwealth, because they are part of what we are today.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a few things on our policies on our for our seniors and social security there. I mean, it's a disgrace when I look at what's going on with our seniors. We need to look after them. We need to give them more money. They need to have a lot more concessions. They pay tax all their life,
Absolutely.
You get treated like
Absolutely.
a second-class citizen at the end of it. All right, we got an hour, so we got through about 12 so far. I might just pick one and we'll close on that one. This is actually a good one. I like this one. How do I vote to ensure GAP and other freedom parties are elected, especially if GAP does not have a candidate in my electorate? Well, I would say GAP may not have a candidate in your electorate, but we certainly will have one in the Senate in every state.
Correct. One above the line, put the majors last and put the freedom parties in CADCO behind 2 and 3 and down you go. But make sure that the majors go last.
Yeah. My recommendation, folks, is for the Senate, which is the tablecloth one. That's a really long one. Minimum 6 above the line or 12 below the line. Now, for me, voting below the line is probably the best way to go, in my opinion, because you're voting for the person. But 99% of people don't. They vote above the line because it's easier. I'd go 24 above the line. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find 24 people that I believe are parties or independents that I believe are for the people of this nation. And right at the end of my ticket, I'll put Liberal right at the end of it. We will not be entering any arrangement on how to vote with any of those majors at all.
Take a biro, and where you can, avoid postal voting. Because if anything's going to be not proper, I would think that's where it starts.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been an hour and 5. We might leave it there. Thanks, everyone. We're going to do 3 of these at least before the election. There's a bunch more questions here I didn't get to, which we'll carry over. I have no doubt there'll be a bunch more comments that we'll try and troll through as well. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Daryl, Darren, Maddie, and thank you, Rod, as the leader of our party. We appreciate your time here tonight. And look out for our next one and look out for the people who are on the streets. Each of the candidates who are on the screen here tonight, Joe, Daryl, Darren's not a candidate, but he's an incredible brains trust for us. Matt, myself, and Rod. We all have our profiles on Facebook. We're on the Great Australian Party. If you can support us, donate. We would love it to you. There's a donate button there. As Rod said, become a member. It keeps us on the street. Well, we don't want to be off the street, does it? It keeps us on the street, gets us out there with the people. And it really is an educational thing. And I think that's the beauty of what you see with Rod on the tools. He's definitely a front man in that regard. He's always on the tools, challenging the establishment and trying to teach and educate the people.
Yeah, and thank you to our members and our followers. So more so.
Yeah, that was going to be my closing. Thanks to all our members who replied to these. We really appreciate you guys. And I know we haven't corresponded as well as we could have. We've got a bunch of things that we're working on in the background there. So look out for that as well. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you joining in tonight. Until next time, enjoy your night.
You too, mate.
Later.
Bye-bye.